All right, welcome to Future Proofing Your Finances, Career Planning for Uncertain Times. This is our November 2025 Get Savvy, Grow Your Green Stuff webinar, part of our annual series. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things related to career planning and finances because they're kind of intertwined in a lot of people's minds. My name is Andrea Pellegrini, and I run the Student Money Management Center for the entire University of Illinois system, including Urbana-Champaign, Chicago, and Springfield. And I am joined today by two of my very great colleagues, Kathy and Kirsten. Kathy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Batty Freeman. I'm the director at the UIS Career Development Center, and I'll turn it over to Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Wilcox. I'm Director of Career Services for the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
We are so lucky to have both Kathy and Kirsten today with us. So thank you both for joining us. And thanks to all of our attendees for hopping on today. Collectively, the Get Savvy webinar team represents organizations across the state of Illinois, which rest on the ancestral lands of multiple Native nations, including the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Waya, Miami, Mascoutin, Ottawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasha nations. And we have a responsibility to acknowledge these Native nations and work with them towards a more vibrant and inclusive society. So if you know about our webinars, we do polling a lot in addition to using the chat. So I'm going to launch this demographics poll. Lets us know who's kind of joining us, what university you're associated with, what age range you're in, whether you're a student or a full-time employee, or a parent or partner of a student, because we serve lots of different types of stakeholders. And that gives Kathy, Kirsten, and I some information that might help us talk about specific contexts of the concepts that we're talking about and how to apply them for different groups of people at different life stages. So it looks like we have a wide age range joining us today from 18 to 54. We have lots of students, but more full-time employees. A lot of folks from Urbana and Chicago. Hopefully we get some Springfield folks joining us soon. And some people from outside of the University of Illinois system. So thank you all for joining us. We have about 80% of you have participated so far. And I'll leave it open for a couple more seconds and then we'll move on. All right, I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results real quick so you can see where you fall and kind of the distribution of these different categories for demographics. And I'm going to stop sharing so you can exit out of that if you still have the window up, and the next poll should still pop up for you. All right, so by the end of today's webinar, we're hoping that you will have a better idea of how to develop both a plan A and a plan B for navigating your career, because lots of things can happen, especially in these uncertain times. We're also going to talk about ways to create a realistic budget for the job search period. Things look different now than they looked even 6 or 9 months ago. So we have to be present in how things are going right now. Hopefully you'll also be able to understand total compensation, not just your base salary. So we'll talk about different benefits that may be available through different employers. We're also going to talk about some strategies for managing financial uncertainty during career transitions. And we're going to also talk about both financial and career goals that can help you kind of pivot with your career and understand that there's some difficulties with some of the market changes right now. So I'm going to hand it over to Kirsten for our next poll.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. So yeah, our poll is what's your biggest concern? What is the issue or worry that brought you to this particular webinar? We're curious to know what is on everyone's mind of the various things we're going to be talking about.
I just launched it. We have about 20% of folks who have participated so far. Can you see the responses?
I can see the response. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Oh, and yeah, a big one seems to be having to consider different career paths, which is definitely something we're going to be talking about. Um, awesome. Managing expense. Yeah. There seems to be interest in all of these things, but particularly the different career paths. Oh, shifting a little bit. Finding a job in my field seems to be going up. All right, we have people, wanting to know if job offers are fair. Kathy's going to have some great material on that coming up. Managing expenses during the job search, student loan payments starting. Awesome. So just to, kind of manage expectations here. Yes, it's hard finding a job. It always has been kind of the standard thing career counselors have been telling students for years is, expected to take at least 3 months. You're not going to find a job right away. But that number has expanded. That the time it takes is getting longer. We know this from anecdotal data, also various studies that people do. It's tough out there. And so if you're experiencing that, you're not alone. Part of the challenge is that traditional career paths are changing beyond all recognition. Some of that due to AI, some of that due to turmoil at the federal level with funding and jobs, some of that to do with the changing media landscape. There's a lot going on, and things that used to be sort of the regular, consistent paths through particular industries just aren't anymore. So it becomes all the more important to focus on being resilient and being ready to change and shift and figure out how your skills fit best with the new reality that's emerging. Important to prepare, but also really important to be prepared ready to pivot. So what we're talking a lot about today is just the preparation and resilience and being ready for what might happen next. And a key part of that can be having multiple strategies. Often when people talk about, the job search, they're talking about that one job, that one career path related to what they trained in. And it's good to have that in mind, but it's also good to have a backup plan or the recognition that you may need to change and pivot. So we're going to explain a few, concepts about how to think about having these two plans and aligning your spending and financial planning with them. So, your ideal career path, don't throw that out the window. Keep in mind what it is you want, what you want to be doing, what your target industry is, what your target role is, what kind of, salary you would like to be getting, what, skills that you already have, what you might need to be building out. By all means, have your ideal, your dream plan. And it's good also, as with any goal, to have a timeline for getting there, but also to recognize that timeline may need some adjusting. But as a response to our poll indicates, like a lot of people realize that they may need to be thinking about things outside of the path that they thought they were on. And they also need strategies for coping in this time of uncertainty and with that career job search that may take longer than one expects. So it's good to have that plan B. And plan B can take several different forms. It might be starting to think about how to transfer your skills to some other area that you haven't necessarily trained for or thought about. Networking can be really helpful here, doing a lot of research, kind of drilling down into what your skills are, very broadly speaking, and how you might apply them elsewhere. Sometimes contract or freelance opportunities in your field can be a way to continue getting experience and building your skills. And in times of financial turmoil, employers will turn to freelancers. They will turn to contract work rather than hiring new people. So that could be an avenue to kind of stay current with your field, even if you're not finding that full-time job that you want. Temporary positions that are unrelated to your field are perfectly fine. I sometimes hear from students who are worried that if they, take a restaurant service job just to pay the bills while they're job hunting, that will somehow look bad. There's no one perfect strategy that's going to make you the ideal candidate for every employer. So I think the things that you need to do to pay the bills and keep going are worth doing. And an employer who's really going to look askance at that is probably not somebody you necessarily want to work for. And also, you never know what skills you might attain, what people you might meet. So those kinds of stopgap jobs are perfectly fine. And then it's also helpful to spend your time, trying to build out your skills, particularly if you're finding yourself having to take that kind of stopgap job, looking for opportunities to get additional certifications or take some free online classes, build some new skills. It can, first of all, teach you some new skills, which is always great, but it can also signal to employers that, even though you've been working a suboptimal job, you've still been thinking about your big plan, you've still been ambitious and building new capacities and expanding your abilities, which is attractive to anyone. It's also helpful to think about your career is going to be a long game. Most people change careers, change jobs. Estimates go everywhere from like 7 times to 27 times, depending on who's running the study and how they're defining a career change. But that thought that you're putting into your plan B now, having that alternative path, will be helpful in the long term, for all the future transitions that may be ahead of you, even should the economy get better, which we all hope it will. But as you're thinking about, various options, it's helpful always to think about skills, regardless of which path you're taking for your plan B, what skills are you using? Where else might they be applicable? Helpful to think about the financial concerns, and Andrea and Kathy will be talking more about that in a minute. And then, which are the things that will bring you closer to your long-term goals? Sometimes it's possible to do things that don't necessarily lie directly in the path of what you want to do, but they can give you some new exposure. They can give you insight into different adjacent industries. They can help you build some relevant skills that will help you with that longer term goal, even if they're not directly putting you there. All right. So yeah, sometimes the choices you need to make are really about keeping yourself afloat financially in this moment. And that's where it's helpful to kind of keep in mind that longer term plan. If you're deciding whether to take a, more lucrative service job over a less lucrative contract opportunity that's in your career path, when you're thinking about how to align your steps, it's helpful to think about what's going to be best long-term as well as what's going to be best short-term. And of course, it's often helpful to spread a broad net, because there are a lot of remote work possibilities out there. So you may not be as geographically limited as you think you are in what your options are. All right, so we've got
I
a
launched this
poll.
poll. Sorry.
Oh,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry. So this can be a helpful framework for thinking about how to choose between the various part-time stopgap measures you may be taking, how to align your Part B, your Plan B, with your overall picture. And that's kind of thinking hard about what it is you want big picture, long term. And it doesn't mean that if you're picking one of these options, you're therefore omitting the others. But it's helpful to know what is most important to you. That can guide more effective decision making than really thinking too narrowly about job title or career path. So at the moment where things stand, I see a lot of people want to not hate my job, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to want. And, you can not hate your job and be making enough money. So, as you're pursuing those plan B options, as you're trying those alternative things, it's helpful to think about, what are you finding rewarding in those other things that you're doing? What are you finding enjoyable? What are some professional contexts where that knowledge about yourself might be relevant? And by the same token, in those stopgap measures, what are the things that you're doing that are really draining your energy, that are depleting you, that would be the element of a job you hate? Really kind of identifying those can help you figure out what paths are going to work going forward. And, if your goal is making a lot of money, again, perfectly reasonable thing to want, but there may be trade-offs there. If you are pursuing the highest possible paycheck, you may be omitting opportunities that might give you more meaning and fulfillment, which isn't to say that, so don't do that. It just means be strategic and thoughtful about it, and keep in mind what kind of your bottom line is, what the thing you really are in pursuit of is. And sometimes that can make it a lot easier to wend your way through the many possibilities out there, particularly if your goal is something like making a difference. If you do know that a certain kind of meaningful work, a certain kind of impact on the world is important to you, sometimes keeping that in mind can be more helpful than keeping a specific job title or industry in mind, because that will help you find other ways to do that thing that you want.
I ended the poll and just shared the results in case anyone else was curious.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I find it really interesting that not hating my job got slightly more answers than making a lot of money.
Context is kind of everything too.
That is true. That is true.
I'll stop sharing so we can move on.
All right.
Is it my turn? I think it's
Yep.
my turn.
You're up.
All right. So, Kirsten did an excellent job of guiding us through kind of what you need to consider when you're reflecting on what's important to you in your career, and what are the trade-offs, and how do you make decisions that are strategic in your career. And so we just want to take a moment to help you think about, what do you want versus potentially what do you need currently to help you navigate your career and help your financial situation to be stable. And now I think it's Kathy's turn.
Yes, it is. So as Kristen mentioned, it's really important to think about your values and utilize that as part of your guidance as you continue your job search and thinking about preparing financially for that process. It's important to think about wants versus needs, and those can change with various situations and various options as well. And so considering how that fits for you can be an important piece. So I'll give a personal example. When I was getting my first professional position after when I was getting the first professional position after getting my master's degree, I knew that I would need my license in order to continue my professional development. And to get that license, I needed to have supervision for 2 years, which cost because you have to pay the person to supervise you generally. So my need was for that license, which was going to advance my career development. My want at that time was for me not to have to pay that cost, but instead having my employer pay that cost. And so I negotiated with my employer to get supervision within the same organization, someone from a different department. So that allowed me to continue with meeting the need of the license and to fit with my want of me not having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on that, but getting it through my employer. So as you are continuing your process, you want to really evaluate what is a need versus what is a want, and are there ways that you can look at addressing those pieces as best as possible. So hopefully that made sense and that example gives you some idea about that. So as we're continuing on, you want to think about budgeting for your job search. As mentioned earlier, job searches are becoming longer processes, and sometimes longer than people expect. So having thinking about 3 to 12 months is important, so that you can plan in advance for that. You also want to consider what are the things that are essential for you. Housing, food, transportation, healthcare, all of those components are part of what you're going to want to include in your budgeting, and look at what you are paying for those now and consider what the future expenses are going to be so that you can develop that budget. There's also costs connected with your job search. So, professional attire, going to networking events, traveling to and from job interviews, all of those things are going to have are going to have some cost connected with them. Part of it will be evaluating what you already have. Part of it may be evaluating resources within your community, but you want to include all of those pieces. And then, of course, the obligations that you already have. Things like student loans, credit cards, other ongoing payments, considering those and keeping in mind that this could take up to a year. You want to include all those pieces. So when you think about your budget, also what pieces are going to be needed to fund your search. So of course, well, not of course, but you want to have an emergency fund set up, because you don't know how long this is going to take and you don't know what other what other activities or things are going to come up along the way. So you want to look at, what your current expenses are, multiply that over the potentially year-long process that it may take, and have some targets based on that. Also consider where else can you get additional support. So are there family resources or family members that may be able to support you? Are there community resources available? We talked about doing temporary jobs in different areas. What income can you bring in from those and connect them to what you're doing? And then is it appropriate for you to pursue unemployment benefits? Depending on why you don't have a job yet, that might be something that you pursue. If you are a recent graduate and it's more connected with recently concluding your education and moving into the job, into the workforce, there may be some different considerations there. So you want to take into considerations all those components. And if you are international students, there are additional things that you want to include as well. International students need to think about OPT and STEM OPT. Employers, you generally want them to be e-verified, and you need to be aware of what the process is for H-1B visas and some of the exemptions around those as well. A lot of that is changing very quickly, and you as a student or a recent graduate international candidate, don't feel like you have to have all of that stuff memorized and know all of those pieces. Yes, you want to be aware of it, but you also want to work with the resources that you have available. You have been a student, you're a recent graduate, etc. You've been focusing on your education and building up your readiness for career. There are other professionals who are focusing on keeping up with the updates with these guidelines and knowing those pieces. So make use of those. All of our campuses have departments that work with international students and have a special focus in these areas. So don't feel like you have to know this all on your own, or reach out to those so that you can connect with that as well. Excuse me. So we know that financial stress and mental health are very much intertwined. Feeling like you don't have all of what you need financially, or feeling like there is some uncertainty in that, can have a direct impact on your mental health. So you want to keep your health in mind as you go along. Um, you want to make sure that you're using all of your resources and not feeling like, or not forcing yourself to just do this alone. You have career center offices, peer support groups, community organizations. There are a lot of resources that you can utilize so that you don't let the financial stress overtake your mental health in a negative way. And having that financial stress can exacerbate mental health problems, relationship problems, other things that are already going on. So be mindful of that and make sure that you take a step back when you need to and utilize your resources when you need to. We also have some wonderful online tools on the money management site that can help with that as well. Oops. So as we continue on, we want to have you thinking about the broader picture. So we've talked about having multiple plans, we've talked about considering your budget, and we've talked about like managing your stress and your mental health around that. So now we want to talk a bit about understanding the total compensation package. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that your benefits can equal up to 31% of your total compensation package. And especially now where we're in a tough job market, you want to consider all of what you potentially may be getting, not just your salary or your wages. So some of the things that you want to consider in addition to your salary or wages will include your health insurance values and costs, retirement benefits and potential employer matching, paid time off and sick leave, professional development activities, and work-life balance. So for some of these things, especially people who are new grads, they think, oh, I can wait a while. I don't need to start thinking about that. I don't need to start doing it now. However, you want your money to work for you. And if you can get contributions from your employer, that puts more money into your retirement area, which allows you to build that up uh, more quickly and plan for that future piece. Most of us do not want to work until we die. So the better we plan for it, the earlier we plan for it, the more we'll have in savings and nest egg. I also come in contact with some people who feel like they don't want to use some of their benefits, but that total package is part of what you agree upon. And so you do want to make use of that. And that helps you in thinking about your overall health. Because as we mentioned earlier, mental health and financial health work together. So when you think about some of the different types of insurance, there's a lot of them. And not all employers are going to have the same options. Some of the most common options are health insurance, which takes care of things like doctor's visits, prescription, medical treatments, those types of things. Dental insurance, which can look at routine coverage, as well as other things like braces or unexpected work. Vision insurance, all of these types of insurance can be very expensive if you don't plan in advance for it. Obviously, sometimes emergency helps, But the more you plan in advance and the more you consider what your employer is offering so that you can be a part of the group, you usually get more discounts and better value for your money when it's a part of a group and not just needing to do it on your own. So as much as possible, you want to identify what your employer is offering and consider that in your total package along with whatever salary and wages you're getting. So when you're thinking of all those pieces, that's part of what helps you evaluate offers. Different employers are going to offer different components. And you want to keep in mind both your values, your location, and all of those pieces that will help you evaluate which of the different office offers are going to work best for you. There are some calculators available, and you have one of them that is included in your resource list. You also want to be able to compare and keep in mind the fact that the base pay, the salary that you're told, is not going to be your take-home pay. There'll be other components such as insurance and taxes and all of that, which will adjust the take-home pay that you get. So you want to keep that in mind as well. And you want to think about what opportunities are there for growth. So that can vary, and in a tough job market, it can be even more difficult for that. So your employer might not be able to pay for you to go to something, but do they have mentoring programs within their organization? So think about all the pieces that allow you to advance your skills and continue your development even when you're in a tough market. Right. S- Yeah, and in the chat, there was a comment in regards to how taxes can be different in different states. And if you work across multiple states, that will also have an impact. So a couple of things you want to keep in mind, maybe some of the red flags when you're considering the job offers and thinking about your financial needs as well. Something that has extremely low benefits. Again, benefits are going to vary depending on the employer as well as the industry. If it seems extremely low, do a little bit of research and see if other employers within that industry are offering the same types of things. If there are unclear job responsibilities, I would say that is probably the biggest red flag for me, because if they don't know what they want you to do, it's going to be hard for them to evaluate whether you're doing it, and that may have an impact on your long-term career development. So if it's unclear in the written job description, but you really think this is something that you're interested in, try doing an informational interview and asking them more about the details. Or if everything else seems good, maybe you want to go to the job interview and have some very poignant questions so that you get more details before you walk away. Job growth, we talked about that in the last slide. Make sure there are opportunities for growth. Consider what it is you need and where you want your career to go, and how those components fit. There may be times where you have to take something that doesn't have immediate job growth, but allows you to continue to have the income and continue to be in the area that you need to be until something else opens up that fits for you. But keep in mind your job growth and poor work-life balance. So that can be people can have very different opinions and thoughts about that, especially depending on what generation you're in. What qualifies as work-life balance is going to be very personal to you, but you do want to keep that in mind and ask yourself, how long would I want to do this? Is it worth taking on this position? Would it fit for who I am, what's important to me, and being able to keep myself wholly healthy as well? So, in addition to those, you want to think about artificial intelligence. That is, the thing we're hearing about most lately, and it comes into play in terms of your job search in a variety of different ways. One thing is that it can definitely impact entry-level jobs. Employers are finding ways and wanting ways to be more efficient. And so if there are good tools that they can use to do that, they may not necessarily want a person to do that. However, AI has limitations. People, there's some fear that AI is going to take away people's jobs. What I would say is it's not going to take away all the jobs, but it's going to alter the jobs. So, for example, AI may be able to develop a timeline for doing a project, but it's not going to help ensure that the people working on the project are able to collaborate together. That is going to take some human interaction and those humanistic skills. And so you want to keep that in mind, both in terms of how AI is impacting jobs, but in terms of you going after your job and after the jobs you're interested in and marketing yourself. You want to help employers see the values that you bring to the position, to the company that AI is not going to be able to handle. AI can be a good tool to help you with brainstorming things, to find ideas, to find missing components, but it's just that. It should be a tool. You never want to let it tell you precisely what to do or how to do it. It's a tool to help you in developing the answers, the solution, the information that you want. So, for example, we teach students how to use AI to compare their resume to a job posting. AI is good at looking at patterns and can help you see whether you are emphasizing the skills that are mentioned in the job postings, whether you are giving example to highlight what's in the job posting. That doesn't mean you should take AI's rewrite of your resume and use that. It means you should use that information about what's missing so that then you can tailor, tweak, update your documents to better fit what's needed. And you want to keep in mind that AI is biased. Humans are biased. AI is built on humans and data, and that bias can come through as well. So never take it as the immediate overall all truth. Take it as one component of information that you then use to build from that. Mhm. Um, We have a variety of tools on our websites that can connect you with AI so that you can use it for some of those building components. And I'll turn it back over to Andrea now.
Thank you, Kathy. Just to add on about the artificial intelligence and bias training data, there's been evidence of if you're using AI to help you analyze and negotiate salary and kind of compare options, it will suggest asking for a lower salary if you're a woman, and it knows that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's just one very specific example of why you want to be mindful that AI is using biased data to give you advice.
And use multiple sources.
Yes, yes, we are big fans of multiple sources. But let's talk about dealing with debt and personal finance management in general during times of transition or when you're between jobs, so you can kind of think more wholly about your financial future as well as your career. So, when it comes to specifically managing debt during career transitions, federal student loans are a big part of many of our students and graduates' lives. So, understanding what your income driven repayment plans are, your options are for any federal loans is really helpful. There's been some transition in the past year about what is available for income driven repayment plans, but we just released a podcast on all those changes, and we're going to be doing a webinar in the spring on student loan management to give you a better overview of what those income driven repayment plan options are. You also want to know what your options are for deferment and forbearance options. So for example, if you have exceeded your grace period, which is 6 months after you graduate for all direct loans, if you have a Perkins loan, it is 9 months after you graduate or leave school or drop below half time. So that's one thing that students don't always understand when they graduate or when they leave school. So you only have a limited amount of time where you don't have to make payments. And you could apply for a deferment or forbearance to avoid going into delinquency or default, which can have longer term credit impacts. So knowing what your options are for federal student loan management can be very helpful for during that time of transition. Or if you're going into a lower paying job than you anticipated, or you have other things that happen in your life that cause the salary that you're getting not to be able to be stretched as far as you want it to be. If you have private loans, it's important that you are communicating with your servicers just like you would with federal loans if you're running into issues. But every private loan has their own set of criteria for how they're going to work with you to negotiate any issues with repayment. If you have to modify your student loans with a private servicer, it's important that you advocate early for yourself and you don't just ignore them, because that can be very challenging for your long-term credit. And then one thing that some students and some job seekers don't understand is that your credit worthiness can impact whether you can get certain jobs in certain fields, because credit can be used as part of your background check. And in some states, it can be used as a general part of your background check. So in Illinois, with the exception of a few finance related fields, it's not legal to use your credit worthiness as part of your background check, but some employers get around that by using the states where they have their headquarters in. So that's important to keep that in mind. So you might want to monitor your credit worthiness, make sure that you're not at risk of identity theft by monitoring that regularly. You can go to annualcreditreport.com to get all 3 of your credit reports from the credit bureaus at least annually, but they offer it at least once per week on a rotating basis. But legally, you're entitled to it at least once every 12 months for Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. So if you do have to use credit for some of your job search expenses, like you need a new professional attire or something, just be responsible with it. Think about what the trade-offs are, and you don't want to be in a position where your debt is causing you to look at higher paying jobs outside of what you really want to do, even if you're offered jobs that are more in your ideal career path, but they don't offer enough to pay your responsibilities or your debt back. So that's important to keep in mind. So we've talked a lot about different strategies for between jobs, but you can also diversify your income even when you get a job by doing part-time work either in your field or adjacently. Again, freelancing and consulting opportunities can really help you with both income diversification as well as gaining skills. So even if you're well into your career, if you need to diversify your income, look at freelancing options or consulting opportunities. You might even consider teaching or tutoring in your area of expertise to help you diversify income. And seasonal or temporary positions can be helpful regardless of where you are in your career path. So keep those in mind, not just now or during times of transition, but in the future as well. Another thing that when you are trying to figure out how many months to budget for your job search is expense management, not just looking at how much your expenses are, but where might there be some opportunities for cutting expenses to stretch some of that money a little bit further. So for example, you might look at sharing a apartment or rent with a roommate or several roommates. You might look at alternatives to your transportation. Instead of buying a new car, maybe you use public transit for a while if that's available to you. There's a lot of variance in how much money we spend on food in general, and inflation doesn't help that. But we just did a how to save money on food webinar that might help you think about how to switch out some of your more expensive food choices for less expensive ones, and some ideas for meal planning for the future. And you might think about auditing what subscription services you're actually using and what you might switch out for bundling, if that's an option that you want to look at as well. All right, so one of the things that Kirsten mentioned was looking at free education if your job position or your job search isn't going as well as you would like it to. But some students or some job seekers will try to go to grad school post undergrad if their job search isn't going as well as they had planned. What we want to emphasize here is going to grad school can be an expensive alternative path if you don't have a clear idea of how it's going to help you reach your career goals. You don't want to be in a position where you're still confused about what your career path should look like, and you're paying $60,000 or $80,000 to get an advanced degree in a field you're not sure you actually want to be in long term. So when you do decide to go to grad school, having that clear idea in mind about how it will help you reach your career goals, and if there's an alternative way to reach your career goals, you might look at that first before going to graduate school, especially if you're undecided. But you also want to have a realistic plan for paying for it. So a lot of advanced degrees require student loans, which are expensive, and the aggregate loan limits are going to be lower starting next year. So you also want to think about, if you are going to use student loans and you're clear on this path, look for ways to cut your expenses while you're in school so you don't hit your aggregate loan limit and are unable to complete your degree. But ideally, if you have access to assistantships or fellowships that pay for all or a significant portion of your graduate schooling, that can be a great option. Just remember that assistantships and fellowships are not guaranteed. They're often very competitive depending on the degree program or the school that you're going to. And some research funded positions may have a certain level of uncertainty with them as well. So keep that in mind if you are looking into going to graduate school. All right, so there are a lot of different options for building your professional brand on a limited income or on a budget. So there are different networking opportunities by leveraging some of the alumni resources and the career services resources available through your school. You can also look at ways to optimize your LinkedIn or use kind of being active on LinkedIn to reach a broader network or expand your network and get you access to potentially other professionals to network with. We already mentioned a lot of professional development free resources that might be available. You might also look at networking professionals and development opportunities through your community as well, or your library, which can be very helpful. And look at expanding your portfolio, be that on LinkedIn or on your personal website, without any expensive tools. You can also look at some of the free or lower cost software if you're still a student through the web store, which might be helpful for you expanding your skills and building out your portfolio. And I'm going to hand it back over to Kirsten to talk about some of the other career and financial planning resources and tools available.
Great, thanks. So we're going to wrap up with some talk of specific resources, things that are available to help you with your job search and your financial planning. But first, a big part of this process is always dealing with rejection. Rejection just comes with the territory of job hunting. There is no way around it. So if you feel comfortable putting in the chat, what are your strategies for coping and for getting through those times when you're job seeking and not getting anywhere? The recommendation I would make is to be aware that it's very easy to let your identity get wrapped up in hearing no over and over again, or getting ghosted, or feeling like your job search isn't going anywhere. So finding those other things that your identity is grounding in and giving them ample time and energy as well can be helpful, whether you regard yourself, primarily as a parent or a pet owner or a crafter or a writer or an artist. If you have these other kinds of things going on in your life, finding ways to express that identity and live in it can be kind of a counter to that weight of rejection. Some career planning tools that are available to you. CIS 360 is a website available through the state of Illinois that has a whole abundance of resources for all stages of the career planning process. There's a lot of great quizzes and tools and assessments and links to further information. Well, we talked in planning this about actually walking people through it, but there's so much, and getting to it can be complicated. So we're just kind of giving you the link. ONET Online is a federal resource that also helps you assess your interests and go from there to an exploration of career paths that are out there. Some students in the U of I system have access to something called the self-directed search, which is a kind of more refined version of ONET Online. So it's worth connecting with your career center to find out if that's available to you. Some other career development resources that are available to you. Professional associations and networking groups can be great places to find job boards and opportunities to meet with other professionals and do various kinds of networking. There are a lot of free online learning platforms, like we mentioned earlier. Those of you who are currently students at the U of I have access to career counseling. Every campus has career services. On some campuses, individual colleges and departments also have career planning. So definitely look into what's available through your program. If you're an alum, you may still have access to some of those services. It varies widely from one unit within the system to another, what they make available to alumni, but it's always good to ask and find out what might be available to you. And then whatever your industry or field is, staying abreast of current trends and developments, following people on LinkedIn, following websites relevant to your particular career interest can also be helpful. And then there are, for people who are in the position of being displaced federal workers, there are some great resources currently available to help them. And we've given links there. Both NCDA and the Graduate Career Consortium are kind of two career services organizations that have made their talents and their abilities available to displaced federal workers who need help figuring out their next step. So if you're in that position, those are some great resources available to you. And then Kathy, we've got some other
Yes.
resources here.
Yeah, I'll continue forward. And just another piece of information about the last two resources that were mentioned. Both of those, I believe, are pro bono, so there's not an additional cost. These are career development professionals who have agreed to provide a limited number of services for free for the displaced workers. So as we continue on thinking about additional tools in regards to planning and management, you want to think about things like keeping track of both your expenses and your budgeting, and find the pieces that are going to work for you. Some people are really good at using Excel. Some people like to keep lists and spreadsheets and different documents on their phone. Find what works for you, because that's going to be the thing that you can use and stick to. You also have a variety of resources online, such as PageScale, Glassdoor, Salary.com, and BLS data that allows you to do comparison. So some of these, like BLS data, that is done by the federal government. It has a wide range of input. Salary.com, it has Salary.com and Glassdoor has some information that are put in both by the people who have obtained the job as well as the employers. So we mentioned earlier using multiple resources so that you're getting data and information from a variety of sources as you're continuing with your planning. And then there are calculators that help make this more help the process go more smoothly for you, as opposed to trying to figure it out all by yourself. The calculators, you can plug in the information and the numbers and get the information from that, both on benefits and loan repayment options. And sometimes this can absolutely become a crisis situation depending on how long your job search takes, and what your budget and your resources look like. So know that there is 211, that you can dial 211 to find out about community assistance programs that covers most of the United States. And I believe if you call that and or check out their website and can't find what you're looking for, they probably can give you additional resources for your area as well. Crisis pieces can include food, utilities, rent, etc. I know I'm on a Facebook group that's specific to the Springfield area. So there's a variety of resources out there. Don't feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. Those are set up to help people in these situations, and you want to make use of that. Mhm. Mhm. So, as we're wrapping up, we gave you a lot of information, and we want you to think about how are you going to apply this and utilize this. So, for example, what are you going to do this week? Some things that you can do this week is look at identifying what's your plan A and what's your plan B, calculating what are your expenses and using that to begin to develop a budget, researching different insurance options, and checking on the student loan grace period if you are about to graduate or if you have been out for a while. So looking at, here's some things that you can do immediately this week to get you started. Then you want to think about longer term goals. So looking at approximately a month out. Have you developed your emergency fund, or are there things that you need to do to build that up? Have you identified what your plan B is and how that fits into your overall goals? And then, are there things that you need to apply for that you want to go ahead and get started? And what systems have you set up to help you continue making progress in your job search and doing it in a financially responsible way? And then thinking more long term in terms of approximately 3 months or 90 days. Have you been tracking your spending, and what does that look like? Do you need to make some adjustments there? Have you been maintaining the structures that you set up to continue with your job search and to continue making progress there? And what does your mental health look like? Are there things that you need to adjust so that you are keeping yourself both physically and mentally healthy along the way?
For those of you that need to go somewhere, I know we're running behind a little bit. We are recording this, so we'll send it out once it's available on YouTube. If you do have to hop up, no worries. So I'll let you finish out, Kathy.
All right. So there's no one normal for everybody. This can be a very challenging process. So don't feel like your process needs to look like anybody else's. And it's okay if things aren't perfect. It's okay if you need to make multiple plans. The important piece is to keep yourself healthy as you're going through this process and don't make yourself an island. You don't have to do this by yourself. You have a variety of resources both through the university and through the community that you can make use of.
All right, so thank you, Kathy and Kirsten, for sharing all of your wonderful knowledge. For those of you that are still with us, our next webinar is Hack Proof Your Holidays, which is all about identity theft and cybersecurity during the festivities of the holidays in winter time, when sometimes there are a lot more scams going on. So that will be on December 3rd. You can register at the same link that you did for this webinar. We also have a post-webinar survey. If you can fill that out, that helps us kind of identify where we can focus our efforts in the future and how we did on this webinar. We also will be posting this to YouTube along with our other webinars. So you can watch all of our previous webinars on the IL Student Money channel on YouTube, or go to go.uillinois.edu/getsavvy. And there's just a list of all our previous webinars, including some from previous years that might help you kind of navigate other things that you have planned to go on in the future. We have lots of collaborators in the Get Savvy webinar series. So we want to thank everybody that's been helping us over the years. And there were some really great ideas in the chat regarding coping. And we're also going to stick around for a few more questions if you have them. So feel free to put your questions either in the chat, or if you don't feel comfortable asking them publicly, there is a Q&A feature turned on, so you can click open the question and answer box and ask your question anonymously if you would prefer. So sometimes when we are presenting, people will send us direct messages or questions. So Kirsten or Kathy, did you get any direct message questions that we should address?
I did not get any direct messaging
I didn't
questions.
either, no.
Okay. I don't think I got any this time, but there were some good comments. But before I go any further, Amy or Sahil, were there any questions that we should address that you noted?
No, I don't think so. There are no questions at the moment.
Yes, likewise. Some great questions in the chat, but I think we've covered them all.
And I'll expand on one of the questions that was in the chat. Somebody asked about mock interviews at the university. Using your alumni network for practice interviews is also a good option, especially if you can find someone that's in the industry you're considering going into.
That's an excellent suggestion. I have also suggested to some of the students that I mentor on things related to their career, maybe they can job shadow as a means of expanding their network, especially for more seasoned students that actually had work experience in their field, but they're trying to establish a new network in a new country, for example. That is also another way to help expand your network. Do jobs shadowing, or do informational interviews with people in positions that you would like to see yourself in the future.
Absolutely.
I'm not getting any other questions or seeing questions. But I think we went over a lot of really great information. Is there any words of wisdom from either of you that you'd like to share with our viewers on YouTube?
I would just reiterate, don't be an island. There are lots of resources available for you to utilize. Start with one that you know of or that you're comfortable with, and I'm sure you can continue to expand from there.
Absolutely, Kathy. And I would just add, you're not alone in this. A lot of people are experiencing challenges in this moment, and there's a lot of people out there to help. So yeah, like Kathy said, don't be an island.
I agree. Well, thank you to everyone that's joined us, everyone that's listening on YouTube. And have a wonderful rest of your day.